bread and fire on a cold Sunday in January. The parish of St. Bridget in Lakefield, Ohio, filled with the ordinary sounds of ordinary people. Coats rustled against pews. Boots tapped salt from slushy sidewalks. Heaters clinked awake. A baby squeaked. A teenager scrolled. A choir member cleared her throat and whispered a pitch into the ear of a friend. The church looked like safety, warm light bathing red brick. Polished wood. The tabernacle shining like a gold ember at the heart of it all. Then Father Daniel, a lean man with Midwestern shoulders and the voice of someone who had spent his youth calling Little League plays over a wind-blown field, lifted the chalice just a breath and said words most of them had not heard in a long time outside of funerals and whispered confessions. Whoever eats and drinks unworthily eats and drinks judgment on himself. The line fell like a stone into the silence. Some parishioners blinked, returning to the sanctuary from their shopping lists and broken trucks and upcoming layoffs. Others stiffened, as if someone had pulled the emergency brake in the middle of their weekly glide. In the fourth pew, a woman named Teresa swallowed hard. 2 weeks earlier, she had driven her niece to a clinic in Detroit. She'd waited in the parking lot, hands white on the wheel, praying the words she remembered from childhood and wishing they would disappear. On the ride home, they had said nothing. Since then, Sunday had become a performance of muscles standing, kneeling, walking forward, opening the mouth in a desperate hope that God would not look closely. Behind Teresa, a man named Caleb leaned back in his jacket like a king in a throne he had purchased himself. He ran 2 small companies of self-storage and landscaping and understood success as proof of blessing. He paid on time. He tithed with a check that impressed the ushers during second collection. In the last fiscal quarter, he had shaved a few percentages here and there from hourly wages only until the storm passed. He told himself, and when the storm passed, he forgot to add them back. He was a practical man. He had not considered that the chalice in Father Daniel's hands might be weighing his hours like coins. At the very back, near the stained glass of St. Michael, Evan stood with his hands in his pockets, trying not to smell like the gin his breath tried to carry. His wife, Annie, had taken the kids to her mother's last week after he hit the kitchen table so hard that the salt shaker leapt and scattered like a flurry of hail. He'd promised to cut back before. Promises, he was discovering, were like paper around a bottle. He could tear them without looking. In the choir loft, Selena adjusted her scarf and glanced at herself in a tiny mirror. She loved to dress well. She loved the attention that followed. A warm river moving toward her every Sunday. She loved the way the world slowed when she walked down the aisle, as if some spotlight had found her. She did not think of men fighting stray thoughts during the Agnus Day. She did not imagine being a stumbling block. She liked to be noticed because, Monday through Friday, she was not. Beside the new baptismal font, Mr. Alvarez, who taught 8th grade catechism, watched 3 of his students whisper and laugh. He had promised their parents he would have them prepared for confirmation by spring. He knew their favorite teams, their app passwords, their crushes. He did not know whether they could say the creed without stumbling. When he looked at their faces, he saw kids who could spend an hour explaining NBA trades, but would not sit 10 minutes quietly in front of a monstrance. He told himself he had tried. He told himself it was their parents' job. He told himself many things. And up front, near the pulpit, James, chair of the parish council, stood with a clipboard and the self-possessed air of a man who believes he has finally shepherded this messy institution into efficiency. The pantry volunteers had quit squabbling. The parking lot lines had been repainted. The budget balanced during the toughest winter in a decade. James liked order. He liked minutes taken and motions seconded and the feeling, walking to his car, that he had done something measurable for God. Father Daniel set down the chalice and rested his hands on the altar. The scratch in his voice, soft as a match dragged along a strip, filled the nave. "I'm not here to frighten you," he said. "I'm here to tell you the truth. The Eucharist is food for sinners, but not for sinners who cling to their sin like a child to a toy he refuses to return. The Lord we receive is mercy, and he is fire." A whisper passed down the aisle, as if the building exhaled. "If you are carrying a mortal wound," he continued, "come to confession. If you've made peace with what kills you, do not come forward today pretending you're fine." It was the most ordinary scandal in old teaching, voiced plainly, and yet it rearranged the morning. People shifted. People thought about the quiet back room to the right of the sanctuary where a soft lamp was always on and a white stole hung, waiting. During the sign of peace, hands reached and were taken. Teresa gripped the fingers of a widow named Eileen who had lost her husband to a heart attack last fall. Eileen held on a second longer than usual, every Sunday teaching through touch what all of her words could not. "Peace of Christ," she said, and her voice made the word peace sound like something that might impossibly exist. The procession began. A line of bodies moved toward the altar. Teresa stayed kneeling. She did not trust her legs to walk anywhere but out the side door and into the January wind. She could feel eyes on her back that were not there and hear whispers that no one was saying. A hand on her shoulder made her start. "Come with me," Eileen whispered. "Now." Teresa followed her around the side, past the Mary statue with its chipped foot, into the short hallway outside the Reconciliation Chapel. The soft lamp burned. Someone had taped a magazine picture of a shepherd searching a rocky hillside to the wall. Father Daniel opened the door a crack, his vestments rustling. 10 minutes after Mass, he said quietly, "I'll be here." He closed the door gently, and it felt to Teresa like the closing of a wound. Across the nave, Caleb took the host and returned to his seat, proud of the steady way he chewed. He knew how to do things properly. Eyes forward, hands clasped. He had never considered that the sacrament might request something from his accounts. Evan stayed frozen in the back, both hands in his pockets. He watched the line like a man staring at the edge of the ocean. He would not walk forward. He could not bear to swallow fire. He felt, suddenly, terribly sober. Selina received with her usual poise, then returned to the loft and sang as if she were paid for clarity. The new soprano, a college kid named Ruth, glanced at her, worried. Ruth had been told more than once by her grandmother that Mass was not a runway. She did not sing as loudly. Mr. Alvarez shuffled through a stack of lesson plans. He had copied pages from a confirmation workbook the diocese recommended and stapled them Thursdays at his kitchen table while the game hummed on mute. He knew the dates on the calendar. He did not know if the kids knew Jesus. He did not know if he did. James walked to the sacristy door and waited for the final hymn to fade. At 12:15, he had scheduled a meeting, new parish maintenance contract. He would insist on 3 bids. He would insist on transparency. After the dismissal, "Go in peace," and the last notes of Holy God, we praise thy name. People filtered toward coffee and donuts. Father Daniel stood at the end of the aisle shaking hands and looking, to some, grim. He was not grim. He was discouraged, which is different and harder to metabolize. He had preached softer homilies for a year and watched marriages crumble anyway. Teenagers drift. And a bright young woman move in with her boyfriend because she told herself rent was cheaper that way. He had buried men who had drunk themselves to death and the women who loved them but could not stay. He had sat in a hospital room while a man who never cursed used the name of God like a hammer. He had stood in the confessional many Tuesday evenings hearing only an echo. Two people approached him now, Eileen and the woman with her, eyes rimmed red. He nodded to James, who was tapping his clipboard against his thigh, and held out his hand to Teresa. Let us begin, he said. The confessional smelled like lilies and lemon polish. A thin wall separated confessor and penitent, and through the screen Father Daniel could see the human outline of her, the tremor in her breath. He prayed a short prayer under his breath and then said it aloud in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and waited. Teresa tried to swallow. The room amplified the sound. She thought of the parking lot in Detroit. She thought of her niece's face. Too old and too young. She thought of the way sin stretched like the shadow of skyscrapers, covering families, friends, everyone who passes underneath. It's been years, she said. I don't know how to start. Start with the truth, he said softly. And do not be afraid. She told him the truth. About the drive. About the silence. About the anger that had led to the drive, a shouting match with her brother. The way she had always been the aunt who handled things. She told him about the nausea she felt walking down the center aisle with everyone else on Sundays afterward. About the relief she felt when the priest finally said words she hated but needed. She finished with a sentence that came out of her like a sob. I don't want to be the kind of woman who calls evil compassion. Silence. Then Father Daniel spoke, not like a judge, not like a man reading a policy aloud, but like a father who is both grieved and grateful that his child has told the truth. There is no wound Christ won't touch, he said. There is no death he won't enter. Confession is not the end of your grief. It is the end of pretending grief is not what it is. She wept again. Quieter now. He gave her a penance that was not punitive. 3 Hail Marys said slowly, and a letter written to God in her kitchen that began with the words, I am sorry and I am yours. And he lifted his hand and spoke the words that change history. I absolve you. When she walked out, the soft lamp still burned. In the hallway, Eileen waited, hands tucked into her sleeves as if she had just come in from the wind. She opened her arms. Teresa went into them like a home. In the parish office, James and 3 committee members sat around a folding table with a pot of coffee and the type of pastries that look better than they taste. The maintenance contractor, a broad-shouldered veteran named Mark, slid a folder across the table. We can do the roof repair by mid-March, Mark said. But the supply chain is weird. We need half up front. No, James said smoothly. We pay a third. Then a third when work begins. Then final third on completion after inspection. That's the policy. Mark took a breath. We've done your roofs for 10 years. And for 10 years, James said. We've also had overruns. From the far end of the table, Renee, a nurse and pantry volunteer,